teens of rage.
Garnet, this game is perfect for you. You seem like a chill rock kind of gal. Your special move is forward, forward back, tap towards half circle, medium kick. Oh, wait, maybe that's an aerial move. Just punch and you'll be fine.
Come on, jump.
I did it.
I have a pretty obvious affinity for older games, preferably the stuff that was around when I was growing up, like the Sony PlayStation, the Game Boy, and the N64. But even though I had more of a tendency to play through games released in the early 90s, I also grew up in a household with a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo console. So I got to experience some fun and sometimes completely frustrating games. Seriously, you'd have to be a bodybuilder to play this shit. That was made at the tail end of the 80s. But way before I was even born and way before kids could experience the magic of said games using at-home consoles and handheld devices, a lot of the older generations weren't cooped up inside gaming. They could play games outside, at arcades. Yes, arcades, those amazing neon-lit Chuck E. Cheese-like playhouses you see in every media depiction of the 80s, with an abundance of pinball machines, arcade cabinets, and cherry coke. While you can still find the occasional arcade builds hidden in various bars and theaters across my neighborhood, these used to be a heck of a lot more common before consoles became a household staple. And now that we have ROMs and emulators and ports of older games for new generations, we have the luxury of exploring and rediscovering old relics from the past, some of which played a role in molding how we experience games today. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at my personal top 5 retro arcade games in no particular order. These are just some of the retro arcade games that I really enjoyed, and hopefully there are some on this list that are either familiar to you or interesting enough to play when you're feeling in the mood for something vintage. So grab those quarters from your mom's purse and pick up your zappers and let's get right into the grub. Mappy is a retro arcade game by Namco that was released in 1983. It's a side-scrolling platformer featuring cartoon burglars known as the Meowkies and a mouse known as Mappy. The name Mappy likely came from the slightly pejorative slang for a police officer in Japan known as Mappo. Once I figured out how to get the MAME emulators running, I played this baby for weeks on end and annoyed my older sister with the constantly looping mischievous tune. Mappy is a literal cops and robbers game where it's your job as the mousy police officer Mappy to collect all of the stolen goods throughout the mansion from each stage, all whilst avoiding encounters with the Meowkies. All the enemies look identical except for this one really fat red cat that I initially thought was a dog. He doesn't chase you like the others do, which makes him a lot less threatening, but if you accidentally run into him, it's bye-bye. As you progress throughout the stages, they vary in difficulty, and the burglars chasing you increase in speed, so you have to be on your toes, making sure you don't stay in one place for too long. There's a few bonus levels along the way to help you stock up on extra lives and power-ups, and special mechanics in the game that are introduced along the way to help you trap or slow down the onslaught of cat burglars, like hitting them with a bell that momentarily freezes them, or outright slamming the door in their faces that knocks them out for a couple of seconds. With the way Mappy's gameplay is structured, it would transfer over really well to cellular devices, and somebody's already capitalized on this idea. Ratty. This is literally a port of Mappy. Overall, Mappy is a really fun and addictive title, and there's just something about that bonus music that makes you want to get up and bust a move with the Holy Spirit. Is a horizontal scrolling shooter game that was released by Namco in 1985 and is actually the first Namco game that allowed for 2 players to play simultaneously. In Sky Kid, players take control of the Sky Kids, which are the characters Red Baron and Blue Max, which is a clever reference to the famous World War I flying ace Manfred von Richthofen, with the Blue Max being referenced to an order of merit by the same name, you know, those fancy blue pins. In Sky Kid, you and your friend must operate your biplanes and are assigned specific targets to seek and destroy on each mission. These targets you have to bomb will either be enemy ships or large fortresses, and while on your mission, you're faced with a large number of obstacles along the way. There's a ton of ground and air units set to foil your mission, so you can either dodge them by performing loops or attack them head on through using your machine gun. On top of these obstacles, there's a lot of terrain to navigate around as the levels increase in difficulty, like billboards, buildings, and other large infrastructures. My favorite thing to do in this game was to shoot at my little sister, which caused her to freak out all the time. And there's no friendly fire in the game, but when you shoot the other player, they get momentarily stunned, which can put them at risk of running into or getting shot at by other aircrafts. And being horrible children, my sister and I would often do this to one another just to see the other person crash. Another bit I couldn't get enough of was towards the end of the stage where you have to perform a landing. If you perform a loop in front of the dancing ladies before you land, they'll send out hearts as a reward, and if you shoot at them, they'll turn into these weird sumo powder puffs. It's hilarious and so crude, and you can probably guess what we did a lot of. But to better illustrate the fun that we had with this game, then I'll just end it off with a clip.
Get the guys. Get the
Which
guys.
one? Which one? Oh, wait.
No! Kill them. Don't. What happened? I exploded. What do you mean what happened? But I got the second one. Look, I'm dancing. Stop it. Oh my god, they're coming for me. Go back. Get that fat kid. You're sick too. Oh no. You're sick? No, it's just my natural mucus. But you gave me sick cough. No! Why are you screaming my name? Oh my god. Look at his stupid nose. Stop going close to the ground.
not going close.
You're panicking.
I'm not panicking.
Land properly and don't even bother shooting.
We didn't even get us high.
It's because you. Just kidding. Kawaii.
No,
Yoshimoto.
Kawaii. He's like,
And
Kawaii.
Amihama.
You know, like, when you're scared. Because Kawaii is scared and then Kawaii is cute.
Is there someone I didn't care about?
Bust a Move 4 is a really great game. Known by several titles such as Puzzle Bobble, Bubble Bobble, and Bust a Move, the franchise was birthed originally as a platformer by the Taito Corporation in 1986. And while there's many incarnations of Bust a Move, I grew up playing a lot of Bust a Move 4, which was the third sequel of the game released in 1998 for the PlayStation and Dreamcast. Bust a Move 4 is different from the original Bubble Bobble in the sense that instead of it having action platformer elements, the game is instead a tile-matching arcade puzzle game, and it's a lot of fun. Did I already say that? At its core, the main objective of the game is to pop strings of colored bubbles all within the allotted time. Bust a Move 4 includes a puzzle mode, story mode, versus mode, mini tournament mode, a ranked mode, and also a player versus player mode. There's also a neat little edit mode where you can craft and play up to 25 unique levels, which I consider to be a function that was completely ahead of its time, as it predates a few bigger games that were praised for having similar features like Little Big Planet. You have the option of playing different characters both in story mode and in versus mode, with the titular heroes being twin brothers Bub and Bob. And fun fact, although for much of the game they appear as cute baby dragons, they're actually humans. Why? Yeah, in the first true and good endings of the original Bubble Bobble, Bub and Bob are turned back into their human forms after rescuing their girlfriends Betty and Patty, who were kidnapped by an antagonist called Super Drunk, who used his magic to turn both brothers into dragons. What the fuck? Ignoring the odd backstory and weird names, Bust a Move 4 has a lot of unique features, and that's why I had so much fun playing this game when I was growing up. It's unique, it's got a cute anime aesthetic, excellent replay value, and a surprising amount of strategy when tackling certain puzzles that I still have trouble with to this day. As the levels increase in difficulty, you really have to plan your moves carefully before taking your next shot. Dug is a retro arcade game developed and published by Namco in 1982. The main objective of this game is to eliminate the monsters underground on a display that looks kinda like one of those ant farms your science teacher would show off in grade school. You can kill the monsters by throwing heavy objects onto them or by inflating them with an air pump until they explode. I don't want to say it. Instead, I'll just pull this up and you can fill in the blanks. There are two types of enemies in Dig Dug, being a race of cute red monsters known as pukas and green dragons known as figers that honestly used to remind me of Bub from Bust-A-Move. Maneuvering underground as Dig Dug, you have to be careful where you dig as you're not immune to the traps you set for monsters and you can be crushed by rocks or even enemy fire. And I'm gonna stop talking about inflation in just a second, but just so you know, it takes 4 pumps to fully inflate a monster, so during this sequence you're unable to move, leaving you pretty vulnerable to other surrounding monsters. And this is where the strategy comes in. Rather than fully inflating the monsters, if you find yourself in a bit of a bind, you could half inflate them as a useful way to stun them for a quick escape. This is also a great technique to keep them in line with the oncoming falling rocks. One little detail I found to be really cute was the fact that the music plays in sync to your character's movements. So when you're mobile, the music plays, and when you stop, then so does the music. It's like he's got his own little theme song. It's just a cute little touch. On top of being a top-notch exterminator, Dig Dug actually has some pretty convoluted lore that I wasn't even aware of until I started doing research for this video. According to the wiki, he's the father of the PlayStation hero Mr. Driller and the ex-husband of the heroine in a game called Baradike. And why did they break up? I have no idea. This is not a tabloid paper, it's a top 5 video. And before we can look at what made the #1 spot, it's time to look at some honorable mentions. Other really cool retro games that were close contestants for being on the top 5 list. This game is so addictive and makes me laugh every time I play it, and I'm not even good at this game. Paperboy is a 1985 arcade game developed and published by Atari Games. The game is exactly as the name states. In Paperboy, you play, well, a paperboy delivering issues of a fictional newspaper known as the Daily Sun around your suburban area on a bicycle. The game has 3 cleverly named difficulties, being Easy Street, Middle Road, and the Hard Way. I can't really say what it is. Perhaps it's the dated aesthetic or the cheesy humor, or the fact that Paperboy is seen as some sort of hero of the town, as each time you play the game it's introduced with a narrator that takes himself way too seriously.
Unmatched in his grim determination to deliver the news, Paperboy in his daily battle with the forces of darkness and evil.
But I end up getting vibes similar to that of the old Spider-Man cartoon of the 70s. This game is a surrealist trip. It may look like just an average boy going from place to place delivering papers, but on your adventure you run into a bunch of really absurd obstacles, like being chased by miniature tornadoes, grim reapers, horror movie murderers, and there's even a funny little crime-fighting element. As I said earlier, the levels are introduced by a narrator setting up Paperboy to seem like some kind of hero of the people. The crime-fighting element is that on your route you have the option of stopping burglars, breaking up fights, and cracking down on pimps? Is that a pimp? I love how much humor they managed to pack into such a simplistic game. It's got happy-go-lucky music mixed with the jarring sound effects from when you crash your bike or get chased by rabid dogs. It's just really hilarious to play through as you have a possible interaction with just about anything around you. This element of being able to completely ruin the streets during your run or restore order makes the game seem even funnier and harder to play through because it's like, do I want to be a noble, law-abiding paperboy or a completely unlawful evil that wreaks havoc on the streets? And there's consequences for messing up the town, as whatever houses you vandalized or missed on your first run will in turn unsubscribe from your paper, which only loses you points. And if you're gonna play the game lawfully, you gotta make sure you pick up new stacks of paper whenever you happen to cross them, because once you run out of papers, then it only increases your chances of losing subscribers, so it's really important to remember that every throw counts. And there you have it, my list of top 5 retro arcade games. If you guys saw anything that you liked, feel free to look it up and play it for yourselves. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the bell and like the video and subscribe and all that fun stuff. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Maybe I'll go play some Dig Dug.